Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AF for Talk. Here's that story I was telling you about from Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. 888-589-8840 is the number to call if you want to join the conversation. 888-589-8840. This is from Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. This is from Stars and Stripes magazine. Since the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy, U.S. military bases have hosted gay marriage ceremonies and potluck gatherings. But on Saturday, service members here may have been the first to take to the stage and perform as drag queens on a military installation in support of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender troops, drag queens and drag kings to be precise. So you start thinking about that. While Putin's troops are invading Ukraine, Obama's troops are dancing in drag. Now, Jeff, if you could grab soundbite number let's grab clip number 7. Emily first. Let's get clip number 7, the John Bolton clip. Bolton, former ambassador to the UN. And he says here what I believe is an important, it's very clean, it's very concise, it's right to the point, and I think he's right on the money when he compares Obama's approach to foreign policy and Putin's approach to foreign policy. Let's listen.
The president on Friday issued that statement of warning to Putin. Will he listen?
No, I think he understands that Obama is a man who lives in a fog of words. To Obama, rhetoric is reality. To Putin, power is reality. And he is exercising power. He couldn't care less about the rhetoric. And the issue is whether the West will respond. Right now, the response is feeble. And the message is clear not only for the Ukrainians and not only for the other former republics of the Soviet Union, that around the world, that Putin is on the move and Obama is in retreat.
Well, yesterday the president had a 90-minute phone call. He was in the Oval Office. Let's take a look at the photograph of the president in jeans talking for an hour and a half with Vladimir Putin. You know, what do you think went on in that phone call? I mean, the White House said that the president used language that was, quote, extraordinarily tough. What does that mean? Was the president yelling at him? Was he cursing at him? Was he saying, tear down this wall, get out now? What do you think went on during that call for 90 minutes?
Well, I think if you look at the White House readout, which I would encourage everybody to read and try and pierce through the gobbledygook, Obama said that Russia was violating international law. Now, that's just about the most serious thing in the world to Barack Obama, and it's probably on a long list of priorities for Putin, something pretty close to the bottom. I think Putin thinks that he can make the reality what he wants. In diplomatic terms, fait accompli. He can get what he wants from Ukraine. He'll confront the West with that reality. The Europeans will crumble before him, and the United States will follow the Europeans. That's the Obama foreign policy at work. That's my prediction.
So again, Bolton saying, look, our weakness invites aggression from our enemies, including Russia. By the way, Putin was right about homosexuality, but wrong about Ukraine. He's right on homosexuality. He is wrong on Ukraine. So Bolton, I think that's a pretty descriptive and poignant and accurate description. For Obama, rhetoric is reality, but for Putin, power is reality. Very succinct, and I think an incisive way to put it. Before we go back to the phones, Jeff, let's grab audio bite 10. This is George Stephanopoulos with John Kerry. And both this soundbite and the next one, the most important component of these sound bites is George Stephanopoulos' question. The question is more important than the answer because, as it becomes very clear, John Kerry has no answers to these questions. Here is soundbite A10, Stephanopoulos talking to John Kerry.
All those violations, sir, so what's the penalty for what Russia has already done?
Well, we're busy right now coordinating with our counterparts in many parts of the world. Yesterday, the President of the United States had an hour-and-a-half conversation with President Putin. He pointed out importantly that we don't want this to be a larger confrontation. We are not looking for a U.S.-Russia East-West redux here. What we want is for Russia to work with us, with Ukraine.
So again, the question Stephanopoulos asked him, what's the penalty for what Russia has already done, essentially invading Ukraine? John Kerry has no answer. Well, we're going to talk about it. Here is clip A11, Stephanopoulos again with John Kerry. And again, the key part of the soundbite is the question that Stephanopoulos asked, because John Kerry has no answer to this question either.
Do you have any indication at all that President Putin is taking heed of what President Obama is saying?
Well, they just had the conversation yesterday, and the president invited him to engage with the government. I understand there may have been one phone call. We're going to continue to engage diplomatically. This is a time for diplomacy, and we will engage diplomatically as much as we can in order to steer this away from an increase in the tension and the level of the crisis.
So again, Stephanopoulos asked him, do you have any indication that Putin is paying any attention to what Obama was saying? And Kerry has no answer to that question whatsoever. You know, the reality is the only world leader who fears American power is Barack Obama. There's only one leader in the world who fears American power, and that is Barack Obama. Now, what I've suggested before at the top of the hour is I don't think the Ukraine is our fight. We don't have a dog in that fight. There's no direct threat to our national defense. There's no direct threat to our sovereignty. I do not think we ought to shed American blood for the Ukrainians. That's not what our military is for. It's to shed its blood if necessary for Americans, for our sovereignty, for our freedom. But what we can do is root for Ukraine. I think we ought to root for them. And what we ought to do is spend our time showing other nations how they can develop a military that will be strong enough to defend themselves if they are to come under attack. All right, let's go to the phones. Let's grab one from Ray in Marietta, Texas. Ray, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, I would just have a question on my mind. If you were to ask the average American individual, what would we need to do and how would we get naval forces anywhere close to Ukraine? I bet they can't even tell you where Ukraine is.
That's probably true.
But you need to go through the Aegean Sea, through the Straits by Istanbul, and by that time you got a bunch of Muslims shooting missiles into the side of your ships.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, stay out of there. And Obama it's kind of like, you might say a Chihuahua up against a pit bull when you got them two like that. He's going to lose.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. I mean, and I agree with you, Ray. Obama is looking weak. It's because he is weak. The entire world sees that he's weak. President Putin doesn't take a single thing seriously that President Obama says or John Kerry says, because he knows, like you say, they're just little chihuahuas. He's the big dog, and there's no way that the chihuahua is going to do anything to the big dog. So he to me, President Putin is just, I don't know what he's doing behind closed doors, but I think he's probably got a snicker. He's probably got a smirk on his face listening to all this kind of bloviation and hot air coming from this administration, because he knows they don't mean it, and they couldn't do anything about it if they wanted. You know, and what's weird is President Obama, while Putin is invading Ukraine, Obama is threatening Israel, if you can believe it. He's threatening Israel. He's threatening Bibi Netanyahu. Bibi Netanyahu is going to be in town today, and Obama is threatening him. So Putin is invading Ukraine, and Obama is threatening Israel. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. Our one ally in that entire region of the Middle East, and Obama's upset with the settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. Well, ladies and gentlemen, remember, there's one reason that Israel controls that land. They won it fair and square in a defensive war. Jordan attacks them. Israel defends itself. They take control of that territory. They're now settling it. They have every right to do it. They won it fair and square in a defensive war. They have the moral right to that territory. So President Obama is the one that's way off base to rebuke Israel for those settlements. But that's just the odd thing. You know, Israel is the one outfit in the world that's actually trying to stop Iran from nuking up. The Mossad has assassinated at least 5 Iranian nuclear scientists. They want to slow that thing down before Iran gets a nuke and blows Israel off the face of the map. So Israel's actually doing something about slowing down the Iranian nuclear program instead of just talking about it. And now President Obama is rebuking them for being the only ones that are actually doing anything about Iran's nuclear threat. All right, Ray, listen, I appreciate the call. Let's go to Frank in Owensville, Kentucky. Frank, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thanks for taking my call,
Yes, sir.
Brian. I think we should stay out of that situation, especially Obama's. I'm going to say the same thing that a lot of other people have said, especially lacking the power to go over there. He's doing the same thing that Carter. Remember Carter did the same thing to make this nation weak.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of the Carter era. Yes, exactly right.
Yeah, and also Carter had made this nation so weak that some of the people were on food stamps in the service.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, Frank, and I appreciate your call. Thank you for that. And here's the good news: is Ronald Reagan turned that thing around. Ronald Reagan turned that thing around, and Iran knew that Ronald Reagan was going to be dead serious about protecting American interests. So you remember the Iranians took control of the U.S. Embassy in Iran, in Tehran, for 444 days. They let him go the very day that Ronald Reagan was sworn into office because they knew that Jimmy Carter was feckless, that he was weak, that none of his threats carried any weight. He was like Obama rattling a swizzle stick instead of a saber, so they just could ignore him. But Reagan, they knew that Reagan was dead serious, and Ronald Reagan strengthened the United States military, and communism fell. Why is Ukraine an independent country? Because Ronald Reagan stared down the Soviets, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. He did, and Ukraine is free today because of Ronald Reagan and his military strength of the United States. Back after the news, Focal Point AFR Talk.